Hello, welcome to Safe People. I believe we are on chapter 4, or is it chapter 3? I don't remember. Chapter 4, how we lost our safety. I remember the day my son Ricky learned about unsafe people. It began with a yowl and a crash in the living room. My wife and I hurried to investigate. What we encountered was a broken lamp, a rapidly disappearing cat, and 2 preschoolers frozen in position. We'd been through these scenarios often enough that I figured out what had happened by the evidence. Ricky, who was 4, had probably pulled the cat's tail again. Stripey had struggled to get away and had knocked over the lamp in her exit. Benny, too, was an innocent bystander. Normally, I would ask the boys what happened, but I was tired. I'd had a long day, and I was convinced of Ricky's guilt by his history of tail pulling. I ordered a timeout. But I didn't do it, he protested. I ignored him. After all, lots of guilty kids protest their innocence. But this time, Ricky didn't settle down into his jail sentence. He began sobbing. Then the unexpected happened. Benny walked up to me and said, "Dad, I did it." At that awful moment, I questioned my calling and competence as a father. I had wrongly accused and disciplined Ricky without listening to his side of things. So with great remorse for his pain, I apologized to my son and asked his forgiveness. Thankfully, kids seem to recover quickly from these sorts of injuries if the parents acknowledge their mistake. Within a few minutes, Ricky and I were wrestling on the floor. But one thing stands out about this incident: the look on my son's face when he realized that no matter what he said, he was going to the timeout corner. I remembered seeing a curious expression on his face. It wasn't sadness or anger, which came within a few seconds, but first it was surprise. Surprise, disbelief. For a brief time, Ricky experienced a shift in his understanding of the world. He thought his parents were fair. He thought that if you were innocent, bad things didn't happen to you. He thought that Dad would believe he was telling the truth. And now, it was as if the rules of life no longer applied, as if gravity were suspended. Dad wasn't as safe as he'd thought. Ricky lost a little of his innocence that day. He began learning about the effects of the fall. The sad truth: many of us can relate to Ricky's experience. The first time we get hurt by an unsafe person, or even a reasonably safe one, there's always a period of surprise as we begin the painful adjustment to the realities of unsafety. We begin grieving our wishes for a perfectly safe, dependable world. This is not an easy step. It's hard knowing we live in a universe in which we're vulnerable to unsafe individuals. People matter to us, and they can deeply injure us. A father wanting to teach his 6-year-old daughter about the world had her stand on the edge of her bed. He stood a couple feet away and said, "Jump, honey, I'll catch you." Hesitantly, the little girl gathered herself and leaped off the bed. Her father moved back and let her fall to the floor. When she hit, she cried, "Why did you drop me, Dad?" "Because," said the father, "I want you to learn not to trust anyone." The girl's father made a grave error in teaching the realities of the world. We have to experience trustworthy love before we can deal with an untrustworthy world. If we have no place to learn about dependable, safe people, we will never be able to sustain ourselves. The father would have done better to let her see his inevitable imperfections emerge than teach her about not expecting perfection. Not really sure what that means. The father should have caught his darn daughter. That's what I say. Teach your daughter that you can trust you, and then tell her that other people might not catch her. But don't let her fall. That's ridiculous. Interjections by Dee Dee. If, like Ricky and the girl in the story, you've been surprised by unsafety, it's awful to understand how we lost our safety. But first, we need to look at the world that God intended for us to have. God never intended for us to suffer the effects of an unsafe world. Instead, he created a safe world where Adam and Eve lived in harmony with him, each other, and themselves. One of Jesus' deepest concerns was our people-to-people connection. He called this being one in his highly priestly manner, that all of them may be one. Father, just as you are in me and I am in you, may they also be in us, that the world may believe that you have sent me. John 17:21. Our safe relationships with others testify to the world about God's safe love for us. He meant us to be in each other, just as the Father and Son are. Imagine that. We are to internalize or take in love from one another and use it just as God does. And then came sin. However, our state of unity and harmonious relationship was not to be. What theologians call the fall from grace changed the nature of relationships forever. Sin entered the world through Satan, Adam, and Eve, and it manifested itself in 4 areas: sin by us, sin against us, sin in the world, and Satan's strategies. Ever had a car mechanic or a doctor ask you, do you want the good news or the bad news first? No, I have my husband ask me that all the time. I always opt for the latter. Then the bad news is out of the way. When we look at the different ways the fall hurt our safety, let's look at the bad news first. The bad news is some of this is our fault. The good news is not all of this is our fault. We all have a sinful nature that we inherited from our first parents, the first dysfunctional family, Adam and Eve, when they gave in to the temptation to deny their humble dependence on the Creator and be like God, knowing good and evil. Genesis 3:5. They damaged their relationship with God and with each other. By the way, if you're not a Christian or you don't believe the Bible, but you like some of the principles here, just eat the meat, spit the bones, according to what you believe. I don't agree with every single part of this book. I'm not saying I don't agree with sin, but I think when you accept Jesus or you have a relationship with God, that sin is washed away. You no longer have a sin nature. But I'm just reading what the book says, okay? So just take it, spit out what you don't like I do. Our sinful nature is widely misunderstood. It's common, for example, to think that our sinful inclinations are only a desire to do bad things. The sinful self also makes me want to hurt others, be lazy, commit adultery, have a bad attitude, and so on. For example, Randy went to his men's support group hesitantly, head hanging low. Though married to a loving wife, he had struggled with pornography for several years. The day before his group meeting, he'd gone to the adult bookstore during lunch. Now confessing his problem to his friends, Randy said, well, guys, it happened again. That old sin nature won out again today. Guess I wasn't in the Word enough. This approach to sin is quite popular because it sounds scriptural. However, this approach is biblically inadequate and incomplete. The truth is, our sinful nature is also our inclination to live without God. In our pride, we come to despise our dependency and powerlessness. We want to be the creator, not the creature. Satan, the first rebel against God, declared, I will ascend above the tops of the clouds. I'll make myself like the Most High. Isaiah 14:14. Satan resented his lowly position of having to depend on and give authority to God. He couldn't accept his creatureliness. Satan then turned around and offered the same deal to Adam and Eve. If you eat from the tree that God forbids you, he said, you will be like God. Adam and Eve bit on the offer, and the rest is history. From Adam and Eve, we were infected with the disease and the desire to live without God. Sin also set into play four more dynamics that are seriously destructive to our safety. 1, we are envious. 2, we think we're self-sufficient. 3, we think we're entitled to special treatment. And 4, we transgress against God's laws. Let's look at each of these 4 areas. Number 1, we're envious. Paula was a single mother who had re-entered the dating world. It wasn't a lot of fun out there, but she did want to date and marry a Christian guy. Her friend Margie had never married and was quite shy about meeting men. To keep each other company in the Shark Tank called dating life, they often accompanied one another to church functions and socials. Margie soon noticed Brad, a likable single man, and set her sights on him. But being reserved, she was having a hard time letting Brad know about her interest. Paula, on the other hand, had quickly met another man, Chuck, and within weeks they had been out several times. Over lunch one day, Maggie said to Paula, how come things are going so well for you? You've already had a chance at marriage, and I haven't even been up to bat. That's not fair. Because of her envy, Margie was unable to cheerlead Paula on to more relational success. And as a result, their relationship suffered. Okay, let me interject here. I don't see anything wrong with what Margie said to Paula. I think it's perfectly fine to say to your friend, hey, what gives here? I've been struggling to even go out with the guy, and you're already almost married to this dude. What is going on? I don't know why they're exactly putting this in a light of this is a bad question to ask your friend. It doesn't make sense to me. But whatever, as I said, I'm going along with the book. That's how envy can spoil safety. Envy makes us resent people who have something we don't have. It feeds on itself and is ultimately self-destructive. When we envy, the very people who are loving, safe, and generous become the bad guys in our eyes. All of us are tainted with envy. No, we're not. Envy is intimately connected with coveting and is best defined as a tendency to hate other people for having what we want. Envy says, what is inside me is bad. What is outside me is good. I hate anyone who has something I desire. Interesting way of looking at it, I suppose. To me, envy is you have something and I want it. Simple as that. Jealousy is I have something and it's all mine and I'm not sharing it. I am coveting this to myself and I'm not giving you any of it. That's jealousy. What I possess, you cannot have. Envy is what you have, I want. Enraged at what he thought was unfairness, the laborer complained to his boss, who replied, oh, I'm sorry, I skipped a part. Jesus taught about envy in the parable of the workers. A laborer worked in the hot sun all day for a boss and accepted a denarius for it, a fair wage in those days. Yet 1 hour before the end of the day, his employer hired another man and paid him a denarius for that hour. This is why you don't tell people what you make at your job, okay? When people say, what are you getting paid? Unless you really trust that person, don't tell them, because this is what creates envy big time and resentment. Enraged at what he thought was unfairness, the laborer complained to his boss, who replied, friend, I am not being unfair to you. Didn't you agree to work for a denarius? Take your pay and go. I want to give the man who was hired last the same as I gave you. Don't I have the right to do what I want with my own money? Or are you envious because I'm generous? Envy makes generosity sound unfair. It is the opposite of love, which does not envy but rejoices with the truth. 1 Corinthians 13:4-6. Remember that the chief priests handed Jesus over to Pilate out of envy. Mark 15:10. They hated that he had more love inside him than they did. Envy is a fundamental result of sinful nature. In fact, Christian philosopher Francis Schaeffer says that every one of the 10 commandments can be summed up in the last. You shall not covet. He states any time that we break one of the other commandments of God, it means that we have already broken this commandment in coveting. In other words, coveting causes outward sin. Envy is very different from need. When we need something from someone else, that person is free to say no to our request. Suppose I ask my friend to go on vacation with me, but he can't because he's busy that week. If I were asking out of need, I would be sad that my friend could not go, but I wouldn't consider him bad for not coming. He's just busy. That's not how envy operates. If I were acting out of envy, I would resent my friend's freedom to say no. When we envy, we make the other person bad for not giving us what we need. Envy says, I'm angry that you don't want to go on vacation with me. You must not care about me. Envy wants to control love, and in so doing, it destroys love. How does envy destroy our safety? By spoiling any chance to be loved. When we envy, we resent those who have something to offer us. And if they do give us something we need, envy makes us, 1, devalue what we just got because our need is insatiable, and 2, resent the giver because he or she could have always given more. Begin to be aware of your tendency to make the haves and the have-nots good. The haves bad and the have-nots good. Ask God to help you to be grateful for what you have and to rejoice in the good things that others have. Then you'll be able to take in more of the safe people who may be waiting for you to ask them for help. Now, I have to say, personally, I am really good at being grateful for what I have and what people give me. What I'm terrible about is rejoicing with other people at times that get stuff that I want. I admit that. That's my flaw. I get kind of resentful and it's like, not fair, God, I wanted that. Yeah, I do. I have envy in me sometimes. Not all the time, but yeah, there's times. There's times I want what somebody else has. I admit it. I've admitted that before, actually. So that's not like a new thing that I've admitted. Okay. And I'm probably not going to get through all of this now because it's pretty long. I'm going to cut it in half. I'm just trying to see how I'm going to go about this. Let's see. There are 4. Give me just a second to see how far I'm going to get on this. 4. And then it goes into that. All right. I'll probably go up to 4 on this first part. Yeah. And then I'll start on number 1 on the next video. Number 2, we think we are self-sufficient. God has created all of us incomplete, inadequate, and in need of a huge shopping list full of ingredients that we cannot provide ourselves. Another way of saying this is God has created each of us with a little void that only He can fill, and other people that He provides across our path. I don't like the way this guy words things sometimes. We are not incomplete and inadequate. Okay, we're not. Especially if you have a relationship with God, you weren't created inadequate or incomplete. It says He's given you all things that pertain to life and godliness. So how is that being created incomplete? This is one of these dudes that believes in I'm just a sinner saved by grace, and I don't. So, okay. Anyway, that's where my word of faith kicks in, just so you know. Okay, this list includes things like God's love and provision, the love of other people, our physical needs. Yet we desire to be a universe unto ourselves. Deep within, all of us hate the idea of having to need others, having to ask for what we don't have, having to bow the knee to God. We resist admitting that we can't make it on our own, that we don't have it together. We do not want to admit our impoverishment because it's humiliating. Okay, again, I'm going to be interjecting a lot in this chapter, I have a feeling. But I don't agree with this author completely. He paints everybody in this general picture of deep within, all of us hate the idea of having to need others, having to ask for what we don't have. No, all of us don't. Okay, if you do, take it to God, get it right, deal with what you have to. I don't resent needing others. I don't resent admitting I need God. No, I'm not in that. Maybe you're not either. I'm just saying I don't like how he generalizes and loops everybody into this. Satan said he would raise his throne above the stars of God. Isaiah 14:13. He hated being dependent on God. Men built the Tower of Babel to be self-sufficient, that we may make a name for ourselves and not be scattered over the face of the whole earth. Genesis 11:4. The Laodicean church pretended they had no needs and were confronted for it. You say, I am rich. I have acquired wealth and do not need a thing, but you do not realize that you are wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. Revelations 3:17. Now, this was specifically to the church of Laodicea, who was acting like that. That doesn't mean all of us are wretched, poor, blind, and naked. But a lot of people, a lot of preachers will preach that kind of garbage. And that's what it is, it's garbage. You're not poor, blind, and wretched, pitiful. The problem is we often teach self-sufficiency as a positive character trait. It's common for hurting Christians who reach out with depression, anxiety, marriage problems, and family issues to be told you don't have enough faith or you aren't victorious enough. We think that the individual who doesn't have problems or who hides his problems is the model for maturity. This is a far cry from what Jesus taught in his parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector. The screwed up, needy man cried out about all his sin and neediness to God and went home justified. Luke 18:14. The Pharisee, however, went home empty-handed. How does our self-sufficiency ruin safety? Primarily by preventing us from experiencing our impoverishment. People who have it together are not hungry or thirsty for others. They do not feel a lack within when they're alone or in distress. They do not connect with other people because they do not experience any need for it. Okay. Again, weigh this one. I wouldn't say every person that has it together, as they say, cannot feel a hunger or thirst to help others. Take it in context. Adults who grow up in military families often report this dynamic. They'll move 12 miles or 12 times in as many years, and they realize quickly that they probably won't see their classmates ever again after each school year. To survive, they simply construct an adaptive front that lets them make a few acquaintances and not get rejected by the class, and that's it. No one gets inside, no one gets close. They stay self-sufficient to keep from experiencing overwhelming loss and abandonment. And they often hold it together until they grow up and try to pull off a marriage, at which time disaster erupts. Make friends with your needs. Welcome them. They are a gift from God designed to draw you into a relationship with Him and with His saved people. Your needs are the cure to the sin of self-sufficiency. Again, this is really, really black and white thinking that this guy has. He thinks the only way that you can get rid of self-sufficiency is to feel needy. No. One main important part that has been part of my life and has helped me depend on God is simply being in relationship with Him. I don't have to feel needy to want to depend on God. I know that my substance and my sustaining is in God. Whether I'm in a time of need or a time of fulfillment, I still need that relationship with Him. I need to talk to Him. I like hanging out with God. He's fun. He's interesting. We have great conversations. And when I don't talk to Him, I feel this longing to go and talk to Him. So I don't feel like the only time that you ever feel a need to be dependent on God is when you are, needy and sinful and desperate. And yeah, I don't agree with that. Anyway, okay. Okay, number 3, we think we are entitled to special treatment. The sin nature also causes a sense of entitlement. So does narcissism. Not only did Satan envy God's goodness, not only did he wish to be self-sufficient, he also felt he deserved privileged treatment. I will ascend above the tops of the clouds. Isaiah 14:14. In other words, Godhood is my right and my prerogative. Just as envy is different from need, so is a sense of entitlement. Need says, I'm hungry and thirsty. Please give me something to eat and drink. Entitlement says, by virtue of who I am, you must give me something to eat and drink. People who feel they're entitled to something are self-absorbed and grandiose. Jonah is a book about entitlement. The Israelite prophet enjoyed a special status of being one of the chosen people of God. So when God was merciful to Nineveh's people, Jonah became enraged at God. He prayed, oh Lord, is this not what I said when I was still at home? That is why I was so quick to flee to Tarshish. I knew that you are a gracious and compassionate God, slow to anger and abounding in love, a God who relents from sending calamity. Now, O Lord, take away my life, for it's better for me to die than to live. Instead of rejoicing at the grace of God, Jonah had a tantrum. In his mind, he and his people had lost their privileged position because there was enough of God for Israel and Nineveh both. Entitlement is a demand for special treatment. Instead of being grateful for ordinary good enough resources and situations, we demand the best. Okay, I'm going to read you these examples in a minute, but I just want to tell you, if you've never heard the story of Jonah, there was an evil group of people. They lived in a town called Nineveh. I mean, these people were vile, really bad. Like some of the worst meanies you ever would encounter on YouTube or off. They were terrible and worse than that even. And God told Jonah to go and tell them that they needed to turn their lives around and stop their garbage, okay? Because he was going to wipe them all out. God was like, I'm fed up with these people. They're doing evil, vile, disgusting things. And, well, God is the one with the clay. He can smash the clay when he wants, I guess. I don't know. I didn't write the Old Testament. I'm just telling you what it says. So Jonah's like, hey, you want me to go into those people? They're nuts. They'll like rend me to pieces. They will destroy me if I go in there. Well, he refused, and then eventually a big fish ends up swallowing him, and he gets spit out into the river, and then he ends up on a boat, and then the boat starts ending up in a storm, and Jonah's like, I know what this is, just throw me overboard. I think I got that backwards. I think he was on the ship first. Yeah, he was on the ship. The ship ended up in a storm. He said, throw me overboard. I'm disobeying God, and that's why this storm is happening. They throw him off the ship. He ends up swallowed by the fish. The fish spits him out on land, I think 3 days and 3 nights later or something. And he goes and talks to the people in Nineveh, tells them you need to shape up or God's going to ship you out. You need to stop doing what you're doing or he's going to wipe you out. He's going to kill every one of you. So they repent. They turn away from their wicked ways. They stop doing all the bad stuff. Jonah gets mad because God says, okay, I forgive them. We're good. Sounds familiar. Like something happening online with somebody that's being forgiven and nobody gets it. Oh no, that person doesn't deserve forgiveness. Jonah got resentful like that and said, God, just kill me. Just wipe me out, kill me, because I know you're what you call it? You're forgiving, you're merciful. I know that you had mercy on these evil people, and I can't stand the thought that these people, you're letting them go. After what they did, you're letting them go. How dare you? Just kill me then, because I don't want to see this. I don't want to see mercy happening to these evil people. I get that, because there are people like Chris Watts. I don't want to see mercy happening to that dude or anybody, anything like him. It's good I'm not judge and jury, seriously, because I'm not sure he'd be in jail right now. I think he probably wouldn't be on the earth. It's good that God is the judge, not me, and the judges are the judge. All right, anyhow, enough on that. So here are a few examples of entitlement, according to the author. Feeling that I deserve a better lot in life than I received. A sense that people need to make restitution for their sins against me. A need for others to apologize for hurting me before I will get better. Ooh, that's a good one. Okay, wait a minute. Let's slow down here because I can own the first one. Feeling that I deserve a better lot in life than I received. Okay, I guess I do sometimes get that kind of entitled feeling. Like, God, this is not what I signed up for, to live in this shed, to have to go through 2 floods and have a house that's full of mold, and then have people not even believe that this is the case and resent me for asking for help. This is not what I signed up for. I was raised in a pretty well-to-do family. I was not raised to be in this situation. I had wall-to-wall carpets. I had a bookcase as you walked in the door. That's what my mom had, with a little terrarium in the top of the bookcase with pretty plants in it. I had a gorgeous living room that I grew up with, and a gorgeous kitchen I grew up with, and steps that went up to bedrooms that had fancy canopy beds and stuff. That's what I grew up with. I didn't grow up like this, living in a shed. Are you kidding? You think I like this? No, I don't. You think I want to be in this situation? No, I don't. Hence why I'm trying to find a job to figure out what I'm going to do next. Who knows? In 2 years, this place will be paid off, and then I can be done with this stupid contract, never sign another one, hopefully, and then move on with my life before I'm old and gray and can't appreciate it. All right, so that's my guilt there, feeling like I deserve a better lot in life than I received. Then a sense that people need to make restitution for their sins against me. Okay, no, I don't have that. But yeah, there's a lot on YouTube that think so, that people owe you restitution. And then this one is big on YouTube. A need for others to apologize for hurting me before I will get better. They owe me an apology. She needs to say she's sorry. Grow up. What? Just deal with it and get on with your life. Nobody owes you anything. Stop thinking somebody needs to apologize to you for stuff. Because some people, they're never going to apologize to you. So you're going to curl up and die and wallow in your pity because somebody won't come and say, I'm sorry. Half the time when they say it, they don't even mean it anyway. So what are you hanging on to that false hope for? I never will get that. Nobody owes me an apology. Nobody needs to come into my chat room and say, I'm sorry, Dee Dee, for saying this. I'm sorry I hurt you. Baloney, whatever. You can if you want, but I don't expect that from anybody. All right, an inability to feel loved when I'm not front and center stage. I was accused of that, but that's not true because I do feel loved. I feel loved by God. I feel loved by myself. I feel loved by my husband and my friends. So no, I don't need you to come and throw money at me to feel loved. I don't need you to come and tell me how wonderful I am to feel loved because it comes from in here. There are many times in my life when I had nobody, literally nobody. And it was God and me, and I was fine because He loves me. That's enough love to get me through, okay? All right. A sense of deprivation when I am not made special to others. No, honestly, no. Feeling that people don't treat me with the respect I deserve. Yeah, sometimes. Definitely. I'm guilty of that one. I do feel disrespected by people because I feel misunderstood by people. All right. So, weigh yourself in those little scenarios there and see where you stand. Obviously, entitlement destroys safety because no normal human can fulfill our demands. True that. It's impossible to love an entitled person, as some fault, empathic misstep, or insensitivity will send the entire relationship tumbling down. The entitled person must be listened to and understood perfectly at all times, or she feels injured and wounded. The end result is isolation. The antidote to entitlement is forgiveness in 2 directions. We need to ask forgiveness for our own imperfections, and we need to learn to forgive others for not meeting our outrageous expectations. We need to learn to forgive others whether they apologize to us or not. That's how it goes. We transgress against God's laws. Finally, the sin nature emerges in an attitude of transgression. When we transgress, we violate a boundary that God has set down. This is an aspect of our sinful nature that rebels against having any restrictions. For example, Adam and Eve had lots of yeses from God, lots of freedom. They only had one note: don't eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and they crossed the only limit he had set. This tendency to break the rules of God is deliberate. It chooses indulging self over loving God. Keep your servant also from willful sins. May they not rule over me. Then will I be blameless, innocent of great transgression. Psalm 19:13 by King David, of course. When we refuse to be kind to someone when it would be right to do it, when we lie to each other, when we lash out in violence, we transgress, disregarding the standards and statutes of God. And with our transgressions, we destroy the safety in our relationships. Sometimes we transgress because we like to rebel. For example, a teenager may drink because he likes to break rules. Sometimes we transgress because of emotional problems. For example, a divorced single mother may drink because she's trying to anesthetize the pain of her disconnectedness. Both teenager and mother are responsible for their destructive actions and attitudes, but we first need to understand why each person is transgressing in order to help him or her. Envy, self-sufficiency, entitlement, and transgressions push us further into isolation. The result of that isolation is generally some sort of breakdown. Like a car running out of gas, we stop functioning well. We act out our addictions, get depressed, and function poorly in our relationships. However, these bad deeds are only a symptom of the deeper problem, the disconnection caused by envy, self-sufficiency, entitlement, and transgressions. Too often we chalk up a behavioral problem to sin and decide to pray more, when more likely than not, it's the isolation that caused the problem, and the big four which caused the isolation. To put it even more clearly, our sinful nature breeds envy, self-sufficiency, entitlement, and transgression. Envy, self-sufficiency, entitlement, and transgression breed isolation. Isolation breeds life problems, emotional, behavioral, relational. For example, remember Randy, whom we met at the beginning of the chapter? He sinned sexually and confessed to his support group that his problem was that he wasn't in the Word enough. That may have been a big part of it, for connection with God is essential. Randy, however, didn't mention that he'd had some major losses recently, with job demotions, problems with his children, and an extremely painful rift with his wife. And as he later found out, he had a clear pattern. When he would encounter losses or overwhelming stress, he would go to pornography for support instead of his friends. They would only find out about his problem later during his confessions. As Randy became more aware of his pattern of going to pornography for comfort, he took steps of calling friends when he felt alone and anxious before he sinned behaviorally. And gradually he felt less and less need to act out. As he acknowledged his need for connection with God and other people, his sinful behavior diminished. Sin against us. Congratulations, you made it through the bad news. Not that this next section is less important, but it's always better to look at our own fault first. As Jesus told us, first take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Okay, hold up here, because I'm so tired of this. Judge not, lest you be judged. BS. That goes on online and in my life, and people saying it to me when I confront them about goofy stuff they're doing. First, remember that word, first. Take the plank out of your own eye. Now remember this next word. And then. Okay, so do this first, and then, which is giving you permission to do the next part, you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Okay? So first take the plank out of your own eye, then you'll see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. It doesn't say, thou shalt not remove the speck from thy brother's eye. Thou shalt not tell thy brother of his sin. Thou shalt not confront people when they're doing stuff that's against the Bible. Thou shalt not tell that person they are wrong. Nope, sorry, doesn't say that. Matthew 7:5, and the Bible doesn't contradict itself. So when it says, judge not lest ye be judged, take that in context, okay? It's not saying don't confront somebody that's in sin. It's saying don't try to play God and condemn somebody to hell. It's not your place to do that. That's what I believe. Take it or leave it, whatever. The fall produced the second reason we lose safety: sin against us. Not only are we perpetrators of evil, but we are also victims of it. We are sinful, but we're also sinned against. The Bible presents many illustrations of this principle. For example, God calls us punishing the children for the sin of the fathers to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me. Exodus 25. Anyone who has come from an alcoholic family background can attest to this. In a fallen world, the innocent suffer for the evil of others. Why do the innocent suffer? Because of love. God designed love to be based on our free will. He didn't want to be loved out of fear or out of compliance. He wanted to be loved out of gratitude. But love has a price tag. If love is free, then a lover is free to be unloving. Otherwise, love is forced. But because we are free to be unloving, many of us have been run over by the steamroller of the selfishness of others. How do sins against us destroy safety? Basically, by destroying our ability to connect with others in helpful ways. This breakdown occurs all through life, but begins in childhood during our developmental years. Let's look at 4 ways that sins against us may have affected our development. Number 1, our bonding process was disrupted. 2, our boundaries were not respected. 3, we were not seen as whole people with good and bad traits. And 4, we were not allowed to mature into adults. Any of these sins against us may affect our ability to form relationships with safe people. All right, hold on. I'm going to see. Yeah. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm debating whether to read a little bit more of this, just so I'm a little bit farther ahead in here. Thing is, I don't want to stop in the middle of something important. Yeah, I think I'm going to keep reading. Okay. Our bonding process was disrupted. Our first and deepest need as human beings is to bond, to attach to another, to trust another, to belong. Just as a baby needs her mother and panics when she isn't present, we need each other's presence. Bonded people are able to reach out for comfort and receive it. However, the bonding process is often disrupted in the following ways: detachment, someone being emotionally inaccessible to us; abandonment, someone connecting then leaving; inconsistency, someone being unstable as a love object; criticism, unloving attacks upon our needy aspects; abuse, violations of our soul that destroy trust. Okay, I'm going to talk about this. Our bonding process was disrupted on another video because I want to keep this somewhat reasonable. It's at 37 minutes, so that's long enough to hold your attention span for a while. I'll see you on the next video.